Any meeting, just about anything that we do, it is recorded. And if you do miss it or want to watch it again, you can go to our website and you can find the recording. So I'm going to pass this over to Suzanne. There is captioning. If you hit along the bottom, you'll see a CC button, and you can hit that and have show captions, and then you can read as well as try to hear what's being said. So I'm going to pass this over to Suzanne, and I will let people in as they come. And
Okay.
Suzanne, I think you wanted to be able to screen share,
Share
correct?
my screen. Yeah.
All right, let me make
Uh,
you a co-host so you're able to share.
So while Dan is setting that up, I'll just introduce myself. Many of you know me already because I've been involved in HLAA since 2012 or 2013, I think, in various roles in the organization. I actually was normally hearing when I began to become involved as a professional advisory committee member. And it was actually after that time that I developed a tumor on my hearing nerve. So I am unilaterally deaf. I've lost all hearing on one side. So I now have a hearing loss. So I can count myself as a real member of the HLAA. And the good news about that is that what I have to say is relevant because I experience it every day. I'm not just speaking from a book or a program, but it is something that I know everyone is experiencing. So I think that's important. It's not absolutely necessary, but I do think it's important. I am a speech pathologist in private practice in the Rochester area. I've been doing that for, I was counting 40 years now, this year, 40 years. I became a speech pathologist when I was 3. And one of the populations that I work with is people with hearing loss. I also am a fluent signer. So it's an area that, in fact, I have always had an interest in, even before I had hearing loss. So today I wanted to share with you some of the expertise that I have in dealing with hearing loss through speech reading, or as many people call it, sort of the more old-fashioned term, lip reading. And we'll talk about that in terms of just overall what the program looks like, what kinds of things we want to think about when we're trying to read communication visually on people's faces. And also we'll do some practice, do some kind of games with some sounds and some words and sentences. So we'll get started. I'm just going to share my screen here. I've got a PowerPoint. Okay. Okay, can everyone see my PowerPoint? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so that's me, Suzanne Johnston, speech pathologist, and the name of this class or course will be Beginning Speech Reading, an intro to speech reading and understanding and skills. And mind you, this is just the tip of the iceberg, okay? So let's get into, okay, there we go. The overview of what we'll talk about today. We're going to speak a little bit about definitions, what the difference is between speech reading and lip reading. We're going to talk about some of the skills that we want to acquire to be better at speech reading, understanding the communication situation, the context, and our partners, using nonverbal cues, some of the basics of lip reading versus speech reading, and then we'll do some practice activities. All right, I'm going to actually knock that down. All right, so a little pre-test here to see what you know. You can judge as we go through this where your answers are correct or not correct. some speakers are easier to lip read than others. True or false? And you guys can chime in here if you have one opinion or the other, if you're brave. Some speakers are easier to lip read than others. What do you think?
Sounds like it's probably true.
Okay. All right. Good. And you know what? I'm just going to give you these answers right away rather than have to come back to this later. So that is true. Some speakers are easier to lip read. It depends on a lot of things, such as facial hair, age, what type of speaker that person is. Do they speak quickly? Do they mumble, etc.? So yes,
Have an
there are
accent?
differences. Mhm.
Do they have an accent?
Right. If they have an accent, yes. And we'll go through all those things in a few minutes. Okay, number 2, it's easier to lip read single sounds than words and phrases. True or false? What do we think?
I'm gonna say false on that one.
That
Sometimes
is
you need,
that is correct. It is false. It is not easier to lip read single sounds because we have no context. Okay, so that is correct, and particularly certain sounds in the back of the mouth. So good, nice. All right, number 3, all consonants are equally easy to lip read.
It's gotta be false.
Yeah, and I
Most of
know.
them.
Yes, one of the words, the key words is all. No, consonants are very different. Some consonants are easy to see, others are not. Good. Learning to lip read the speaker's mouth is the most important skill in successful speech reading. True or false?
I
It
think
is.
it's true.
Yeah. Okay, we got a couple different answers there. So actually, learning to lip read the speaker's mouth is not one of the most important skills. It's a good adjunct skill, but it's not the most important skill. Okay, and we'll talk about that today. Communication context plays a significant role in lip reading skill. True or false?
That'd be true.
True.
Yes, that is true. The
Yeah.
context of where you are, who you're talking to, what you're talking about is very important. And finally, speech reading is an innate skill that you are born with.
No,
That is
false.
That's
false.
false.
Although some people tend to be better speech readers than others, I am not a good speech reader. I'll tell you that, even though I've had lots of practice.
Wow.
But I'm not that good. Some people are just innately better at it. However, it is also something that if you work at it, you will get better at it. And it takes practice, 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 right? Some of the people here who have done a lot of speech reading in their lifetime can probably agree to that. Okay. So there are a few other complications that we have to think about that interfere with speech reading and comprehension of a message. Obviously, the first one is just the loss of sound. We just don't have as much sound to draw from to figure out what people are saying. The other thing that we know about people with hearing loss is they may have other medical concerns. Often hearing loss goes hand in hand with other medical challenges. So it can include physical challenges, which can prevent you from being close to your partner or lower than your partners. Let's say you have to be in a wheelchair, you're not face to face. There may also be vision loss. As we get older, we know a lot of people with hearing loss are older. They may have some vision loss. Also, they may have some changes cognitively in their thinking and problem-solving skills. And our processing times for information is longer. So maybe, I don't know, if someone can agree or not on this kind of experience that I've had in the past, and that is I'll hear someone talking and I won't know what they're saying. And all of a sudden, 2 seconds later, I'm like, oh, I know what he said. Anybody ever have that kind of experience?
Oh, yeah.
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 So that is your brain, excuse
Oh.
me, that is your brain figuring out, is taking a little bit longer to figure out what people are saying. The challenge with that is that then you're missing information while you're figuring everything out, right? So,
My mother had vascular dementia, and you would talk to her, and I don't think she heard you at all, and she didn't wear hearing aids till she moved in with us, and she would look just like the other way, like this, and smile, and it was just like, she didn't hear you at all, but she was trying the whole processing thing, so she wasn't connecting the dots like she used to.
yeah, exactly. And so that can have a significant impact on what we quote unquote hear, right? All right. Why should we learn speech reading and lip reading? This is pretty obvious. We know that hearing loss can cause frustration. We can get angry at people not being patient with us, or angry just because we have a hearing loss and we can't do things we used to do. People can be depressed, can feel isolated. So obviously a good reason to learn how to do better at speech reading and lip reading is that overall it can help you to communicate and reconnect with your environment. Okay, I think that's pretty obvious. All right, let's talk a little bit about the actual training process of speech reading. So we can all practice speech reading every day as we go about our day, right? If we're talking about an actual formal speech reading process, training process, which is something that I do as a speech pathologist, we talk about different aspects of speech reading, including discussion, general discussion, and just developing an awareness of the process of speech reading and who you are as a communicator. How you communicate is really important, has a big impact on how well you do with speech reading. The second area that we look at is reflecting on your own habits and skills. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of those later on in this presentation. We also move forward to identifying easy and difficult listening situations and kind of problem solve around those. If you're in a difficult listening situation, what can you do to enhance your communication and be a better speech reader? And then finally, we'll do some formal lip reading or speech reading lessons at various levels of hierarchy, from easy to more challenging. And again, it takes practice, right? So when I'm actually working with someone on speech reading skills, we're doing very a hierarchy of skills that we practice. Okay. So we talked, or I mentioned earlier, that lip reading and speech reading are kind of two different things. All right. So when we think of communication and making yourself a better communicator, you need to think of bottom-up skills as well as top-down skills. So we're approaching speech reading from a sort of in a stepwise manner, that is reading what is happening on the mouth, the actual lip reading. But we're also doing top-down work, which is understanding what's the bigger message. What kind of clues can I get that will help me be better at lip reading, right? So that is the difference between both lip reading and speech reading. We use them together to do a better job at understanding other people's communication. It's important. We can't do one or the other. We use both those skills. All right, what kinds of skills do we use to understand other people? First of all, auditory input, that's the obvious one, right? And we do still have, many of us do still have some auditory input. Hearing aids are so much better than they were even 10 years ago. Cochlear implants, et cetera, so that there is some interpretation of sound, or what appears to be sound. So we have that available to us at whatever level. And being aware of how much do I have available to me. Visual cues. So what kinds of cues will my speaker, my partner, offer me? Are they someone that has, do they do a lot of gesturing? Are they a very expressive speaker? Or are they pretty rigid? Do they not show a lot of facial expression? As well as other cues, not just about your speaker that you're with, but also environmental cues, right? So what's happening? What's the conversation in this group? It's focused around work today, or just picking up on some other cues in the environment so that you can be better at predicting what people might be saying. And that leads me to the next one, which is context clues. Again, the ease of the situation, obviously, one-to-one in a quiet environment is ideal. We don't typically have that opportunity. Usually a lot of conversation happens in small groups. Hopefully it's in quiet, but very often it's not. It could be in a larger group. And as we come up to the holidays, this is a really challenging time for people to communicate, for people with hearing loss to communicate, because you have families, you have lots of noise, you have lots of busyness, a lot of things happening that don't normally happen on a daily basis, conversations with different people, people are rushing about. So all those things can create a challenging situation for communication. So being aware of what's going to challenge you and what's going to make your life easier is good. Also your just experience in the world, your cultural background is going to influence how you predict communication. Different cultures communicate differently. They have different things to say. They use different words to say the same thing. They have different expectations for communication. And then, as you mentioned earlier, Gerard, even just different accents can throw you for a loop. If you're used to living in a country that has a variety of accents, you're going to get better at that. If you've always just spoken to people with a Northern American English accent, it's going to be harder for you. So your overall world experience, your cultural experience, your level of vocabulary competence. So if you're someone who is highly educated with a big vocabulary, you have more words to draw from, to predict from. Whereas if you just kind of lived an average life, didn't, haven't done a lot in your life, that you've stayed pretty much close to home, then you have a smaller fund on which to draw. So thinking about your world experience. And then obviously primary language, which, as we mentioned, is going to be the easiest in your native language and culture. I'm going to skip that one. Okay, as I mentioned, we use all of these skills together, which results in the most effective and the best level of comprehension that we can hope for. And here's just a little math problem. Let's say for lip reading, you're maybe at 45%, which is pretty good, actually. Your recognition of words with your hearing aids is maybe 20%. And you're able to predict some other things through the context and other cues, about 15%. So what does that total up to? About 80%. So now you've got a pretty good head start on understanding what's being said. So thinking about how all of these skills add up is really important. We want to use as many as we can that are available to us.
But I guess the thing with that is you're at a deficit now, though, because anytime you're in background noise, that already throws that equation off. And then say you're so say you're in background noise. Say someone's trying to talk to you in background noise. You know, any of those kind of, and say you're walking. I have hearing aids now. I can't even hear the guy talking to me who's next to me while he's walking, like behind me or in front of me.
Right.
And that's messed up.
Yes. And as you see here, auditory word recognition, that was at 20%. Maybe it's for you, it's going to be 0. So now you've got to knock that number down to maybe 60%, half of what you have available to you will account for half of the communication, right? So yeah, you need to take, again, it's adding all these things up, or in some cases taking them away, right? Yeah, so just being aware of what you have available to you or not is great. So you not being able to hear the person next to you, now I'm not going to be able to hear anything. I'm walking down the street with my friend next to me, there's cars going by. I'm not going to be able to hear anything. Now I have to do more lip reading. I have to do more context cues. Maybe I have to change maybe I'm the one that's going to have to direct the conversation, etc. So yeah, it's good to be aware of all those skills, all those things that you've got. Good comment. Thanks, Gerard. Okay, what do you and your partner bring to the table? And as I noted on this slide, it takes 2 to tango, right? So you do not speech read all by yourself. You have to have someone with you that you have to speech read, right? Your partner, and it may be more than one partner in a group. But you have to be sensitive to what that person and you bring to the table, right? So good speech readers are speech readers who take risks, right? So people who shy away from taking risks, sort of trying things out, maybe guessing at a word. If people shy away from doing that, they're going to make slower progress. One of the things that I tell the people that I work with, they'll say, oh, I don't know what that sound is, or I don't know what that word is. And I'll say, just guess. Just guess. That's the best thing that you can do. Take that risk. And oftentimes, guess what? They're correct. And they amaze themselves. Oh, I understood that whole sentence, even though you didn't use your voice at all. And that's the benefit of taking risks. Now, of course, you're going to get it wrong sometimes, but you'll learn. All right, the duration of your hearing loss. So if you have just had a hearing loss for a short period of time, you're still probably learning how to hear without hearing, how to communicate without hearing. And so your brain, your person is still figuring out how to best communicate. People who've had a hearing loss for a longer period of time tend to be better speech readers because they've become more sensitive to that. I know I've become a better speech reader since 2012 or 13 when I actually became, well, actually it was more like 15 when I developed a hearing loss. So, and my speech reading has gotten better since then, I'm happy to say. Your partner familiarity. So it's going to be easier for you to read people who you know well, you know how they speak, you know the tones of their voice, you know the way that they speak, the inflection, the rhythm. So that's makes speech reading easier for you. Self-advocacy skills. We know that's really important for people with hearing loss. In general, but also as a speech reader. Can you say that again? Can you say it a little bit more slowly for me? Just being able to ask people to do that makes you a better speech reader. And being sensitive to what kind of personality. Are you an impatient person? Do you get fed up with people quickly? Or are you willing to work at trying? Are you patient? Do you take your time? Are you willing to problem solve around a situation? So being sensitive not just to your personality, but also the people that you're with, right? So if you're speaking with someone, say a work colleague, and you know that they are not going to be sensitive to your needs, you know that that's more challenging for you as a listener, as a communicator. So just being sensitive to these aspects of communication is important. Okay, so let's move on to looking at speech reading. What kinds of things do we want to think about? I want you to think about the overall theme. And this is, again, top down, big picture stuff. The overall theme of the interaction. So some of the things to consider, some WH questions. Where are you? What is your context? Are you at dinner in a restaurant? Or are you at the doctor's office? Think about what kinds of words or what phrases or discussions happen in those different places. They're going to be very different, right? So at dinner, you might be more sensitive to somebody talking about the entree. At the doctor's office, it's going to be more along the lines of your health. So those lexicons or vocabulary is going to be very different, and being sensitive to that and being able to use that and leverage that will be helpful. And again, the next item down, what are you doing? Talking about food or your health? Yep. What are you actually doing when you're having a discussion? How easy is it to see your partner or their face or their mouth? Right? You need to be able to see someone. Very difficult to speech read if that person is turned away from you, or if they're far away from you, if they're at a different level. So being sensitive to that and maximizing that opportunity for you to be ideally pretty close within a number of feet. You should be able to see not just part of their face, but probably this whole upper part of their body is going to be helpful, because you're going to be getting some other cues from that. Does your partner have a beard or facial hair? That's also important, because people with beards or facial hair are harder to lip read, and even speech read to some extent. Thinking about the words and phrases that you might encounter, getting back up to the theme again, and your familiarity with possible vocabulary or the depth of the conversation. So obviously it's going to be easier to speech read what your cashier at Wegmans is saying than it is to, oh, I just see a typo there, than it is to repair a carburetor. Right? I don't think I could speech read that even if I could hear every word. But so they're very different conversations. One is very deep and detailed. The other one is superficial. So think about that and make predictions based on that. Okay, so I want to take a few minutes. We've been listening for a little while here.
Oh, wait a minute. So that page, so tuna casserole or tuna carburetor, that could get misinterpreted, kind of a thing, especially if you didn't hear them right,
Right, and it could, except that that when somebody's talking about their carburetor, they're not going to be using the word casserole. So even
that's a context thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
So even though they might say something on their mouth, you might see something that looks like casserole. No, you know it's not casserole because you're not talking about tuna casserole. You're talking about the carburetor. So you can then predict it's probably the word is probably carburetor, right? All right. So all right, let's do a little practice. So let me take this down for a minute. We'll come back to it in a second. And I am going to say some sentences without sound. Okay. Now we're in kind of an ideal environment here because you can see my face really well. The lighting is good. And this is pretty predictable stuff. We're going to start with the doctor's office. Okay. So I'm going to say a few sentences and let's see who can come up with possible answers. All right. Doctor's office. Okay. You're sitting, let's say you're sitting in the waiting room and the nurse comes out and the nurse says,
The doctor will see you now.
perfect. Yep. You didn't even have to get any sound for that. Perfect. That was great. Who said that? Lori. Nice. Nice. Okay. You're with your doctor or maybe a nurse, and that person says,
I can't make it out.
any guesses?
How much do you weigh?
Good. Nice. Oh, you're cleaning it up here, Lori. Yeah. How much do you weigh? The other clue, if you will notice, is this kind of frowning thing, which means what? I'm asking a question, and we'll talk a little bit more about facial cues in a minute, but watch for facial cues. A question versus a statement look very different on someone's face, right? Okay, good. How about let's move on to a different one. We're going to be a trip to the grocery store. Okay. So here's another one. Somebody came up to me. I was at Wegmans and someone came up to me and said,
Do you know where the laundry soap is?
great, Gerard, beautiful.
I don't know.
Yeah, that was kind of a hard one. It was a long sentence. Good. And you saw me kind of frown. That's, somebody's asking me a question. So I already know that's either a what or a do or a how or a why, right? Good. All right. And I'm still at the store and I'm asking someone where the cereal is. And that person says,
Down aisle 11.
yes, aisle 11. Very good. That's in aisle 11. Nice. Good. All right. Let's move on to a problem with the car. Okay. So the context is you're taking your car into the shop and the car mechanic is there and he says, or I should say, she says,
What is the problem?
very good. What seems to be the problem?
Don't
Yep.
seem-
Yep. Perfect. Yep. And remember, you don't need to have every single word. As long as you get the message. And here's the other thing that as we're finishing up, the context is we're finishing up at the counter and the mechanic says, so think about what happens at the counter when you're finishing up. What kind of information should you expect to hear?
Like to hear what they did to your car and how much it's going to cost.
Did I say something about that? I'm going to
I
give it to
don't know. I missed it.
Yep. I'm going to
But I'm just taking an educated guess right there.
and that's exactly right. You need to, that's called risk taking an educated guess. I'm going to give it to you one more time. Ready? No.
I think you said it'll be ready Wednesday.
Yeah, good. Good, Dan. Yeah, ready on Wednesday. Good. Nice. Mhm. Yep. So you guys already did a great job thinking about the context, where you are, what's happening, and then a whole sentence, right? Without even hearing a single sound. So you didn't even use any auditory input. That's excellent. So let's go back. I'm going to go back to sharing again here. Okay. So that was great. Good practice. All right. Now, predictions based on other cues. You saw me talking and saw me doing some frowning, raising my eyebrows. You want to look for other kinds of cues such as head nods, if somebody's understanding you, or maybe they're not, maybe they're shaking their head, how they're using their hands. We know some people use their hands a lot. Other people don't use their hands or arms at all. Some of that's cultural.
Yeah.
But that can be helpful. And how that person is just positioning their body. So looking for that. Are they comfortable? Are they smiling? Are they friendly? Or are they sort of moving away from you a little bit? Is it more formal? Okay. Look for facial expressions. As I said, the question is sort of frown, raised eyebrow for surprise, tension, relaxation in the face, smiles, agreement, statement. I'm going to come back out of this slide. And again, I'm going to give you some facial expressions. You tell me what you think they mean. Okay. So here's the first one. Surprise. Yeah.
Nice.
Somebody probably saying something about, wow, how surprised they are, right? How about this one?
Confused?
Pardon?
Confused?
Confused.
Confusion?
Confused is a little different, but some similarities. I'm going to give
like,
it to you again. Ready?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
questioning, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Close. So I'm doing what and everybody's a little different. Again,
Right,
know you
exactly.
speak, know your partner, right? So this is my worried look.
Oh, that's a word.
Yeah. Good. But good guesses. Yep. All right. Another one would be
Happy?
just kind of relaxed and happy. Yes. How about this one?
You're confused, not quite sure.
Yeah, not quite sure. Kind of shaking my head, or I don't really understand what you're saying. Yes. Good. So there you go. You've just gotten a lot of information from your speaker without any words whatsoever, right? So you can now start to sort of decipher what they're saying that goes with that. So, let's go back to our slides again. Oops. Go. So yes, so oops. I don't understand you. What does that look like on somebody's face? That's the one that I just did. Are you kidding? That's like sort of the child here in this picture, sort of, oh my goodness, your hands on your face, your mouth is open. Or I really agree, that would be a lot of head nodding and sort of a relaxed face, right? So again, thinking about the nonverbals is really important. Reading lips or lip reading. So this is some of the hardest work that we do. The context, again, that top-down skill is easiest. Looking at vowels and consonants. So we break those into those two areas, vowels and consonants. So vowels are the most important because most hearing information, most auditory information about words is in vowels. A, E, I, O, U, and some other of the double vowels. But they're also the hardest to distinguish because they happen inside the mouth. So we need to watch for general shapes on the mouth, right? So the lips out, ooh, or oi. That's when the lips are pushed out. Ow, right? Or more neutral vowels like ah, eh. Those are in the middle of the mouth. All right, so being sensitive to that. Then when we look at consonants, we usually get a little bit more visual information from consonants. They occur in different parts in the mouth. The ones that occur on the lips, because they're most obvious, are the easiest to see. Those are the ones that are easiest to read. So a word like mom is easy to read because it has what we call a bilabial, both lips, for those sounds on the mouth. Very easy to see. Bob, easy to see. Mom, ma'am, map, very easy to see. Whereas some of the other sounds, like what we call the fricatives and tip dentals, which are made with the tongue on the teeth or the teeth on the lips, those are somewhat visible, but you can still see them. The velars, which are made in the back of the mouth, are very hard to see. So Mac and Matt might look pretty similar. And that's where we have to start using our context cues, right? To predict what we are hearing or what we should be hearing. Again, height of the mouth for vowels, open mouth for ah or I, the spread of the lips for E and A, big spread of the lips, and lip pursing for ooh, oh, oi. Okay. Looking at my time here. Let's actually move on. I'm not going to practice these vowels with you right now. And then the lip reading the consonants, which are made on the lips. We talked about the tip dentals, the ones that are made in the back of the tongue, and understanding how to predict those sounds based on what you're seeing. Let's do this. I'm going to move on. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm just going to make some sounds, and these are not even full words, some of them. You just tell me what you think they should sound like, right? So what would this sound like? What did
Bob,
I say? Ma. I just said ma, right? How
Oh,
about
if there's something at the end of that. Okay.
here's another one.
Boo.
Boo. Good. How about this one?
Mike.
Watch my lips at the very end. They're doing this smiling thing, right? Close. It's actually pay. But yeah, buy is very close. Let's try another couple.
Bob.
Good.
what is it?
True.
Two.
Oh,
So
two.
again, excuse me, you see how hard that is without any context? You're kind of, excuse me, kind of grasping at straws there a little bit. If you had context, for instance, if you knew I was saying a number and I said,
Two.
yeah,
Oh.
that's clear what it is, right? Yeah. So let's go back to sharing. And let's see, let's move on here a little bit. So again, just thinking about lip reading and speech reading in general, it doesn't happen by yourself. It's hard to do by yourself. You have to do it with other people, or at least look for resources where you can watch other people. It should happen on a regular basis. You should take a few minutes every day, unless you're super good at it already. You should try and do it on a regular basis. It's always easier if you have a partner that you can use, but you can also, if you don't have a partner, you can use other resources around you, like the TV. Turn the TV down so you can't get any auditory. And if you know what the show is, you might be able to guess some sentences. Or you can look at TED Talks. You know what the subject is. What are these people saying? You can look at YouTube videos, YouTube video on how to knit an Afghan. I don't know, whatever, you know, whatever's familiar to you. And then you can start doing some speech reading practice that way. So using those kinds of tools, they're all around. There are also web-based programs. I'm going to let you know what a couple of those are in a minute. And you can, of course, also go for speech therapy for professional assistance if you choose to really do some dedicated work on speech reading. Just again, these are tips for successful lip reading and speech reading. They also are just tips for successful communication in general. So using full attention, taking breaks, because our brain gets tired when it has to attend so closely for so long. I was at a dinner the other night with 11 women, and I thought I was going to go nuts because there was so much noise and everyone was trying to talk all at once in a very small space. And I had to just walk out of the room for a while and just take a sound break for a while because, and a brain break, because it was so hard for me to do that for an extended period. Try to imagine the sound as you were just doing when you were watching my mouth with those words. What kind of sound would my mouth be making, right? Some cues for rhythm of speech can be helpful. Optimize your lighting so that the lighting is on your speaker's face and that you can see them well. Use your context cues, watch for gesture and body movements, keeping track of the conversation you want to advocate. And you can do that by saying, can you say that again? Or wait a minute, I don't think I caught what you just said. Okay. Can you tell me that again? I forgot what you said. Sometimes I'll say that. Oh, I forgot what you just said. What were you saying again? So self-advocate. You can enlist a speech buddy. Like my husband is my speech buddy when we go out with friends. I'll say, okay, you need to help me if I'm having problems listening. I might ask you, or he'll repeat things for me if he thinks I didn't understand, and he's paying attention to how I'm reacting, right? So having someone around that can do that for you is helpful. And then just using other clues, looking for reactions from other people. Am I reading them right? And looking for those context cues. Some of the online resources that are really good, these are actually the UK, the United Kingdom, Great Britain, is much more advanced than we are at teaching lip reading. And the sites that these offer are British websites, but you can get some really good practice in. Both of them have practice at various different levels. There's a lot of education about lip reading and speech reading, and just informational resources. So they're great for that. I can put that in the chat too, if you want. And then in terms of apps, there are not that many apps out there for lip reading practice. I found one that was free. I don't like to ever pay for apps. So I guess I'm cheap, but there is one that's free out there called Lip Reading Academy. And that you can track your accuracy on lip reading words with that. So
It's totally free, even after a trial or you do a
Yep.
couple exercises, it's still free.
Yep,
That's
it's still free. Yep. There are other ones that you can pay for.
Right.
I wouldn't know what those are like because I never pay for any apps like that. So, okay. I'm gonna stop there, I think. Yeah. Okay, so do we have any questions? Do you all have any questions or thoughts or experiences that you'd like to share? I'm wondering. How good of a lip reader do you think you are, or a speech reader? I really prefer to use the term speech reading because it includes everything around not just lips, but also everything around the communicative act, speech reader. How good, Dan?
I can share a quick story. I was on a poker run and we were in Newark and we were like standing outside and there was a guy with a microphone reading off the numbers of the raffle tickets. Well, there was a guy next to him basically feeding him the numbers to say. So I knew the numbers before he announced them. So I go watch. The next number is XYZ. And sure enough, the guy says XYZ over the microphone. And the person that didn't know me was right there next to me and he looked at me like I was Houdini or like I was some kind of a
Magic.
mind reader. So, we got a kick out of it. But yeah,
That's great. Yeah, that's fun. That you know more
it
than
is
the hearing person knows, right? Yeah, it
possibly,
can
yeah.
be. You can also read people across the room, right? So you don't even have to hear them. This is one thing that I learned actually working with deaf folks is, of course, they use sign. We don't use sign, but because they're so visually oriented, they actually communicate at quite a distance with each other. And if you can see that person's face, if the light is good and you can see what they're doing and you know the context of your conversation, you can actually do some communication across the room, right? Yeah.
I've seen it in like football games and you'll see the coaches yelling at the referees and you can kind of pick up on some of the words he or she may have said. So yeah, I always get a kick out of that.
And that's why you see, like in these football games, you see the coach going like this because the camera is on him, and people are very good at lip reading, right?
They never
know
used to do that back once upon a time. Now they hold something in front of their face, all that kind of thing.
Yeah,
That never happened,
people figured that out. Yep.
Yeah,
You
they
learn
have people on the other side trying to lip. And some of the players have hearing loss as well. So they're always lip reading or looking for hand signals or whatnot to get the plays. So it's quite interesting what's going on.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, some good comments. Any questions? Any thoughts about now, for those of you who've had a hearing loss for a long time, do you feel like you're pretty good at lip reading? Dan, you mentioned this experience that you had. In general, do people feel like you've gotten better over time at reading those kinds of things?
When I started, my speech pathologist, I was in speech therapy all through way up to high school. So I had a lot of that kind of practice. She would hold a piece of paper, say the words, and you try to understand the sounds you heard, and then she'll take the paper away and not say any sound. And so I've been through years of that practice, and it's extremely valuable. It really is. But when COVID hit, it was like the world was crashing down for me because I lost a huge tool
Right.
with the speech reading, and that was really traumatic for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't realize how big of a part of your life it is. You know, you think you're relying on your hearing completely, but actually you're not. The less hearing you have, the more you're relying on your visual and your other abilities to perceive what's going on, to understand the conversation. And you don't realize how much you do that until that's taken away from you, right? Dan, I think that's what you're speaking to.
Yeah,
Mhm.
very much so.
Well, I didn't have hearing aids during COVID. And so when people were in masks, like my wife, she wore double masks. And so, because she's a teacher, and I was having a hard time trying to hear just even before I had hearing aids, kind of thing. So that kind of was another kind of signal to me, you know.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I have a question. So that party you went to, you had 11 people there. So you've had hearing loss for a long time, right?
Since about 2015, yeah.
Have you always had to do that? I mean, so it doesn't ever change. Like I mean, you basically just get to the point where there's just too much input. There's just too much that your brain is tired, or I mean, does the brain still get tired? I have no idea what happens,
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. It's probably a little bit different for everyone. I lost my hearing gradually over time. So it just became harder and harder for me over time. And now because I have no hearing, I have no more hearing to lose in that ear. But now I'm losing my hearing in my good ear, just age-related hearing loss, right?
Okay.
And so I have just over time kind of figured out what's helpful and what's not helpful. And I've sort of had to accommodate having to work harder and harder and harder at having to hear conversations. And, because in some ways it's been good that my hearing loss has been somewhat gradual, because I've been able to accommodate over time, unlike some people who have sudden hearing loss and then they have to figure it all out very quickly. But certainly, in my work, I work only one-to-one with people. So that makes my job easier because, I'm 3 or 4 feet away from the person in front of me at all times. And so communication is not an issue when I'm working. But if I'm out with friends or whatever, it becomes really a challenge. And I have to work hard, and you have to take breaks.
Can you hear the person across from you in a noisy restaurant?
Depends on how noisy it is. And it depends on who that speaker is or what the conversation is, right?
Wow.
The first thing that I do is become aware of what the environment's like. I position myself in a strategic way so that my good ear is directed towards the conversation. I make sure the light is as optimal as I can have it. I
Wow.
Again, knowing about my partners, I try and anticipate what we might talk about. And if I need help, often my husband is there to help me.
Well, I'm saying it's him. So then the familiarity's there. But at the same time, I've tried the speech to listen function on the phone, remote listen, the whole line, live listen, the whole thing. And you can put the phone on the table all you want, but it still picks up everybody else too. So unless the phone is right in front of that person working as a remote microphone, it's still hard to hear.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And phones are really challenging too, because you don't get any visual, right? It's all just auditory. And there are oftentimes the people who call on phones are from another country. They have heavy accents. And I talk about being patient. I'm probably not as patient with some of them as I should be.
well, I have Zoom
do
calls at work
advocate.
with 3 Indian guys, and one of them I can't understand at all, and then 2 of them I could understand easily. So it just depends on where they're from. You know,
Mhm.
Indian, you know,
Mhm.
different dialects, just
And
like
what-
any other kind of country.
Right, and what kind of speaker they are,
What
as
kind
we
of
were
speaker they
talking earlier, you know.
Right.
Some people are more patient, take their time, they're more calm. Other people are more in a hurry,
Right.
speak more quickly. Yes, Dan.
You may consider a caption phone. I don't know if you have a regular line. If it's a business line, that could be tough, but if it's just like one line coming in, like a home line, you can have a caption phone for free, provided to you by a federal program. And basically, everything that's being said over the phone, you can read
Oh,
as
I don't
well
have
as
a problem
hear.
hearing on the phone at all. They go right to my ear,
Oh, yeah, I
Oh,
have
yeah.
that too.
you know.
I know.
So
Yeah.
it's the whole restaurant kind of, you
Mhm.
know, out
Noisy.
somewhere where there's, you know, people and they're right next to you or they're right across from you, and you're not getting any of it.
Yeah, and that is one of the most challenging places to communicate is in a restaurant.
Yeah.
You know,
All kinds of noise, the light's not good. Yeah, yes.
background music, you know.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah. And I find myself taking charge of making the reservation, because then I can choose the restaurant that I want to go to. Something that's quiet, got good lighting, and good food.
It doesn't exist.
You also want to put your back up against the wall, and that will cut off all the sound behind you, and at least put sound in one area, which is in front of you or maybe next to you. Put your good ear towards the person that you're going to talk to the most, um, or at least the person you have trouble hearing the most, maybe.
Well,
Sit right next to them.
it's not even your good ear. Your ears are picking up all the what the microphones are here.
Right.
Oh, I know. I
Back.
know.
Yes.
Yeah, it's tough. I don't know if you have like a mini mic. Some you can hear some hearing aid companies have mini mics.
I don't have a phone act now. I have Oticon, and that's it. And I do the remote listen. You could do it with your iPhone. That's supposed to be
You
the
can.
idea right there, or live listen.
Yes.
You know, and I've done it. You know, like we were at, my wife and I went to Nick Seabury's Inn. She's right across from me. All I'm hearing is plates clanking, the people talking, you know, the table away. You know,
Yeah.
she's right in front of me, and
Yeah.
I'm not really hearing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most frustrating thing in the world, or maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
The other
letting other
thing-
people know you have hearing loss, and saying this, what get my attention, or at least make sure I'm understanding
Right. Check for
the conversation. If you switch topics all of a sudden, I'm going to struggle, or making people aware
Yeah.
of trying to get your attention and facing you when they, it's tired. It really is. You're constantly reminding people, and by the end of the day, you're tired. It's just
The
the way
the
it
other,
is.
yeah, there's no doubt. And we're all in the same kind of boat, just different, looks different for some of us, but we're all in the same boat. You can be assured of that. The other
It's
thing,
different for everybody. So you can tell one person, and like I know a guy at work, he's got single-sided deafness. He's been, you know, he's had hearing loss he's wore hearing aids for 20 years, you know. And so for him, I asked him, does this bother you? Does that bother you? No.
really, wow. I know it bothers me. I have single-sided deafness and it really bothers me.
You know. So
Some people, well,
so
maybe.
anyway, it's just it's just like he goes, you have issues.
The other thing too, Gerard, is you might want to take some time and go, although it's in during the day, but our demo center has a lot of techie devices that can be helpful for hearing, especially hearing in environments, outside of optimal environments. So you might want to take some time and see if you can't visit that. That's every month on what, the third Thursday, and what is
Third Thursday of the month.
It was,
A speech reading, the batteries never die.
right?
It's with you all the time. I mean, but it is a skill that takes time and work and
Yeah, I didn't
practice. It
really
doesn't
think I
come
would-
overnight.
I mean, so
Well, very good. I appreciate everybody that was here tonight. Some good comments and questions. You did great on your test. And we'll talk more about maybe having another session, I don't know, in the fall or something like that, possibly. But yeah, and reach out to me if you all have any questions. I am the secretary on the board. And I don't think my contact information is in the
It
news.
might not be, but if you shoot an email into ACLAA, somebody will get it to you.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
And actually my contact information is in the newsletter because my business card is in the newsletter.
Yes, that's right.
Speech
Yeah.
and Communication Services, yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, very good.
right.
Thank you so
Great
much.
question.
Thank
Thank
you.
All
you.
right. Take
Okay.
care. Have
All
a
right.
good
Good night, everybody.
Okay,
night.
bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.